Adaptation. While considering the various alternatives available to organisms for coping with extremes in their environment, we have seen that some are able to respond through certain physiological adjustments, while others are able to do so behaviorally, migrating temporarily to less stressful habitat. These responses are actually their adaptations. So we can say that adaptation is any attribute of organism, morphological, physiological, behavioral, that enables the organism to survive and reproduce in its habitat. Many adaptations have evolved over a long evolutionary time and are genetically fixed. In the absence of an external source of water, the kangaroo rat in North American deserts is capable of meeting all the water requirement through its internal fat oxidation, in which water is a byproduct. It also has the ability to concentrate its urine so that the minimal volume of water is used to remove excretory products. Many desert plants have a thick cuticle on their leaf surface and have their stomata arranged in deep pits sunken to minimize water loss through transpiration. They also have a special photosynthetic pathway CAM that enables their stomata to remain closed during daytime. Some desert plants like Opuntia have no leaves. They are reduced to spines and the photosynthetic functions is taken over by platen stems. Mammals from colder climate generally have shorter ear and limbs to minimize heat loss. This is called Allen's rule. In polar sea, aquatic mammals like seals have a thick layer of flat blubber below their skin that act as an insulator and reduce loss of body heat. Some organisms possess adaptations that are physiological which allow them to respond quickly to stressful situations. If you ever had been to the high altitude places greater than 3500 Rotan Pass near Manali and Leh, you must have experienced what is called altitude sickness. Its symptoms include nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitation. This is because in low atmospheric pressure of high altitudes, the body does not get enough oxygen. But gradually, you get acclimated and stop experiencing altitude sickness. How did your body solve this problem? The body compensated low oxygen availability by increasing red blood cells production, decreasing the binding affinity of hemoglobin, and by increasing the heart rate. Many tribes live in the high altitude of Himalayas. Find out if they normally have a higher red blood cell count or total hemoglobin than people living in the plains. In most animals, the metabolic reaction and hence are all the physiological functions proceed optimally in a narrow room temperature range. In humans, it is 37 degrees Celsius. But there are microbes, archaebacteria that flourish in hot spring and deep sea hydrothermal vents where the temperature far exceeds 100 degrees Celsius. How is this possible? Many fish thrive in Antarctica waters where the temperature is always below zero. How do they manage to prevent their body fluids from freezing? A large variety of marine invertebrates and fish live in greater depths in the ocean where the pressure could be greater than 100 times normal atmospheric pressure that we experience. How do they live under such high pressure and do have any specific special enzymes? Organisms living in such extreme environments show a fantastic array of biochemical adaptation. Organism living in such extreme environment shows a fascinating array of biochemical adaptation. Some organisms show behavioral responses to cope with the variation in their environment. Desert lizards lack the physiological ability that mammals have to deal with high temperature of their habitat, but manage to keep their body temperature fairly constant by behavioral means. They bask in the sun and absorb the heat when the body temperature drops below the comfort zone, but move into the shade in the ambient temperature starts increasing. Some species are capable of burrowing into the soil and hide and escape from above the ground heat.
Populations. Population attributes. In nature, we rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Majority of them live in groups in a well-defined geographical area, share or compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed and thus constitute a population. Although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from asexual reproduction, is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. All the conformants in a wetland, rats in abundant dwellings, teak trees in a forest tract, bacteria in a cultural plate, and lotus plant in pond are some example of a population. In earlier chapter, you have learned that although an individual organism is the one that has to cope with changed environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. A population has a certain attributes whereas an individual organism does not. An individual may have births and deaths, but a population has birth rates and death rates. In a population, these rates refer to a per capita births and deaths. The rates, hence, expressed as change in human numbers, increase or decrease with respect to member of population. Here is an example. If in a pond there are 20 lotus plants last year and through reproduction 8 new plants are added, taking the current population is 28, we calculate the birth rate as 8 by 20, that is 0.4 offsprings per lotus per year. If 4 individuals in the laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in the population during that period is 4 by 40, that is 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. Another attribute characteristic of a population is sex ratio. An individual is either a male or a female, but a population has a sex ratio, that is 60% of the population are females and 40% are males. A population at a given time is composed of individuals of different races. If the age distribution percent of individual of a given age or a group is plotted for the population, the resulting structure is called an age pyramid. For human population, the age pyramids generally show age distribution of male and females in a diagram. The shape of the pyramid reflects the growth status of the population, whether it's growing or stable or declining. The size of the population tells us a lot about its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological process we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with other species, the impact of the predator, or the effect of pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of any change in population size. The size in nature could be as low as less than 10 Siberian crane in Bharatpur wetlands in a year, or into millions, that is Chlamydomonas in pond. Population size, technically called population density, designated as N, need not necessarily be measured numbers only. Although the total number is generally most appropriate measure for population density, it is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. In an area of 200 paranthecium plant, but only a single huge banyan tree with a large stating that population density of banyan is low relatively to that of the parenchyma amount to understanding the enormous role of banyan in that community. In such cases, the percent cover or biomass is more meaningful measure of the population size. The total number is again not a easily adaptable measure if the population is huge and counting impossible or very time consuming. If you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in a petri dish, what is the best measure to report its density? Sometimes, for certain ecological investigation, there is no need to know the absolute population of densities. Relative densities are the purpose equally well. For instance, the number of fishes caught per trap is a good enough measure for the total population density in the lake. We are mostly obliged to estimate the population size indirectly, without actually counting them or seeing them. The tiger census in a national park, tiger reserve, is often based on pub marks and fecal pellets. Population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps changing with time, depending on various factors including food availability, predation pressure, and adverse weather. In fact, it is the change in population density that gives us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it's flourishing or declining. Whatever might be the ultimate reason, the density of population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuates due to the change in Four basic processes, two of which is natality and immigration, contribute to the increase in the population density, and two, mortality and immigration to a decrease. Natality refers to the number of births during the given period in a population that are added to the initial density. Mortality, it's the number of deaths in the population during a given period. Immigration is the number of individuals of same species that have come into habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Immigration, it's the number of individuals of the population who has left the habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. You can see from the above equation. So the equation, if n is the population density at time t, then the density at time t plus 1 is n plus b plus I minus d plus e. You can see from the above equation that population density will increase if the number of births plus the number of immigrants is more than the number of deaths plus the number of immigrants. Under the normal condition, births and deaths are the most important factors in influencing population density. The other two factors assuming importance under the special conditions. For instance, if new habitat is just being colonized, immigration may contribute more significantly to the population growth than birth rates. Growth models. Does the growth of a population with the time shows any specific and predictable pattern? We have been considered about unbridled human population growth and problems created by it in our own country, and it's therefore natural for us to be curious if the different animal population in nature behave the same way or show the some restraints on the growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature how to control population growth. Exponential growth. Resources, that is food and space availability, is obviously essential for the unabated growth of a population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to really fulfill its innate potential to grow in number, as Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection. Then the population grows in an exponential or geometrical fashion. If the population of if in a population of size n, the birth rate, not total number per capita birth, are represented by b, and death rates, again per capita death rates, as d, the increase or decrease in n during a unit time period t, dn by dt will be dn by dt is equals to b minus d into n. Let b minus d equals to r, then dn by dt is equals to r multiplied with n. The r in the equation is called intrinsic rate of natural increase and is very important parameter chosen for assessing impacts of any biotic or abiotic factor on population growth. To give you some idea about the magnitude of value or R values, for the Norway rat the R is 0.015, and for the floor beetle it's 0.12. In 1981, the R value for human population in India was 0.0205. Find out the current R value is. For calculating it, you need to know the birth rates and death rates. The above equation describes the exponential or geometric growth pattern of a population and results in a J-shaped curve when we plot n in relation to time. If you are familiar with the basic calculus, you can derive the integral of the exponential growth equation as n to the power t is n naught e to the power rt, where n t population density after time t, n naught population density at time 0, r intrinsic rate of natural increase, e the base of natural logarithm. Any species growing exponentially under unlimited resource condition can reach enormous population density in a short time. Darwin showed that how even a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous number in absence of checks. The following is an anecdote popularly narrated to demonstrate dramatically how a fast and a huge population could build up when growing exponentially. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king, confident for winning the game, was ready to accept any bet proposed by the minister. The minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted some wheat grains, the quantity of which would be calculated by placing on the chessboard one grain in square 1, then 2 in square 2, then 4 in 3, and 8 in 4, and so on, doubling each time the previous quantity of wheat, and next square all 64 square are filled. The king accepted this silly bet and started the game, but unluckily for him, the minister won. The king felt that fulfilling the minister's bet was so easy. He started with a single grain on the first square and proceeded to fill all other square following minister suggested the procedure. But at the time he covered the half of the chessboard, the king realized this dismay that all the wheat produced in the entire kingdom pulled together would still be inadequate to cover all the 64 squares. Now think of a tiny paramecium starting with just one individual and through binary fission doubling in numbers every day, and imagine what mind-boggling population size it would reach in 64 days provided food and space remaining unlimited. Logistic growth. No population of any species in nature has its disposal unlimited resource to permit exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. The governments of many countries have also realized this fact and introduced various restraints with the view of limit human population growth. In nature, a given habitat has enough resources to support a maximum possible number beyond which no further growth is possible. Let us call this limit as nature's carrying capacity K for that species in the habitat. A population growth in a habitat with limited resources shows initially a lag phase, followed by a phase of acceleration and deceleration and final asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. A plot of n in relation to time results in sigmoid curve. This type of population growth is called result per logistic growth and is described by the following equation. dn by dt is Rn k minus n by k, where n is population density at time t, r is intrinsic rate of natural increase, k is carrying capacity. Since resources for growth for most animal population are finite and become limiting sooner or later, the logistic growth model is considered more realistic one. Gathered from government census data, the population figures for India for the last 100 years, plot them and check the growth pattern is evident. Life history of variation. Population evolved to maximize their reproductive fitness and also called Darwin's fitness, high value of R, in the habitat in which they live. Under a particular set of selection pressure, organisms evolve towards the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once their lifetime, that is Pacific salmon, fish, and bamboo, while the other breed many times during the lifetime, that is most birds and mammals. Some produce a large number of small-sized offsprings, that is oysters and pelagic fishes, while the others produce a small number of large-sized offsprings, that is birds and mammals. So, which is desirable for maximizing fitness? Ecologists suggest that life history traits of organisms have evolved in relation to constraint imposed by a biotic and biotic component of the habitat in which they live. Evolution of life history in the different species is currently an important area of research being conducted by geologists.